Everyone talks about red flags, right? But almost nobody notices the moment just before. The quiet second when someone forgets to perform. That's when their true self leaks out. Dark psychology isn't about tricks. It's about patterns. And the first pattern always shows up when attention moves away from her. Watch closely. When the spotlight shifts, does curiosity appear? Or irritation? I once saw a woman smile effortlessly until the conversation stopped revolving around her. Her posture changed. Her tone cooled. Something snapped. Nothing dramatic happened, but that's the point. Small moments reveal big realities. Most people explain these moments away. She's tired, stressed, having a bad day. That excuse is the trap. What you're seeing isn't mood, it's hierarchy. In her internal ranking, admiration sits above connection, performance above participation. And once you notice that order, you start seeing how she'll treat you when you stop feeding it completely. Here's where dark psychology gets uncomfortable. People don't reveal their true nature when things go wrong. They reveal it when things stop revolving around them. Pay attention to what happens when you suggest an activity, not a compliment session, not sitting and admiring. Something that requires effort, focus, or shared contribution. A game, a walk, building something. Anything where attention leaves her appearance. That's when confusion shows up first. Then annoyance. Then subtle hostility. Why participation threatens performance. Engagement replaces admiration, and for some people that feels like loss. I watched a man suggest something harmless, just changing plans slightly. The smile didn't fade immediately. It tightened. Her words were calm, but the energy shifted. The language moved into victimhood. Why would you do this to me? That sentence matters. Dark psychology teaches this. People reveal entitlement through phrasing. Everything becomes something done to them. And once you hear that, you can't unhear what it predicts next. Here's the subtle danger most men miss. It's not the reaction itself. It's how fast reality gets distorted. In dark psychology, language is a diagnostic tool. When a simple suggestion becomes, "You're hurting me," something deeper is happening. Normal friction is being reframed as an attack. That's not emotion. That's strategy. Notice the pattern. You suggest an activity. She doesn't say, "I'm not into that." Instead, she escalates. "Why are you ignoring me? Why are you making me feel invisible?" The accusation arrives instantly. This is where the mask slips. Healthy people separate intent from impact. Unhealthy ones collapse everything into blame. Here's the tension. If a harmless moment triggers victim language, imagine real conflict. Imagine stress. Imagine boundaries. Your gut senses this before your brain fully processes it. That tight feeling in your chest isn't insecurity, it's pattern recognition activating. And once that alarm rings, the real question becomes, do you listen? Or do you silence it? This is where most people make the costliest mistake of their life. They override instinct with explanation. Dark psychology shows us that the body reacts before the brain makes excuses. That unease you feel, that hesitation before suggesting plans, it's not fear of conflict. It's fear of punishment. Watch what happens next. You start editing yourself, choosing safer words, avoiding activities you enjoy, not because you changed, but because you learned what triggers her mood. That's the shift from partner to regulator. I've seen this pattern repeat endlessly. A man stops suggesting things, sharing ideas, initiating anything that doesn't guarantee approval. He calls it compromise. It isn't, it's conditioning. Here's the chilling part. She doesn't notice you're shrinking. Or worse, she does and she prefers it. Because someone whose true nature is control doesn't want harmony. They want predictability. Your silence becomes proof they're winning. And the longer this dynamic continues, the harder it becomes to remember who you were before it started. Now here's the moment the illusion fully breaks. When she isn't the center of attention and doesn't get it back. Dark psychology calls this an attention withdrawal test. You don't announce it. You don't provoke. You simply focus elsewhere. A task, a hobby, a conversation that doesn't orbit her emotions. Watch carefully. The reaction won't be direct at first. It comes disguised as boredom, then sarcasm, then passive aggression. Finally, accusation. You don't care anymore. You're different. You're ignoring me. Notice what's missing. curiosity, support, respect. This isn't about love. It's about access. Someone whose true nature is entitlement experiences your independence as betrayal. Your focus becomes a threat. I once saw a woman become visibly angry while her partner played guitar for 15 minutes. Not loud, not late, just unavailable. That reaction tells you everything, because a healthy partner celebrates your interests. An unhealthy one competes with them, and competition inside a relationship always leads to one outcome: someone has to lose. Here's where the dark psychology pattern becomes impossible to ignore. The language shifts from emotion to ownership. Listen closely. You made me feel. You always do this. You never think about me. These phrases sound emotional. They aren't. They're control mechanisms. Responsibility is quietly transferred onto you. Her feelings become your obligation. Her boredom becomes your failure. And here's the trap. If you accept that responsibility once, it never stops. You start managing her moods like a full-time job. Entertainer, therapist, apology machine. But notice something chilling. No matter how perfectly you perform, the dissatisfaction remains. The problem was never your behavior. It was her need for constant emotional supply. Dark psychology explains it clearly. Some people don't want partnership. They want regulation. They don't want love. They want relief from themselves. And once you realize that, a terrifying question appears. If her happiness depends on your exhaustion, how long can you survive before something in you breaks? This is where the pattern escalates from exhausting to dangerous. When guilt becomes a weapon, dark psychology teaches that manipulation doesn't start with rage. It starts with disappointment, with sighs, with subtle sadness designed to pull you back into line. You begin hearing things like, "I guess I just don't matter to you," or worse, silence. Long, heavy silence that makes you anxious enough to self-correct. This is emotional conditioning. You're being trained to associate your independence with punishment, your hobbies with conflict, your boundaries with guilt. And it works because you care. Notice the imbalance. When she needs space, it's self-care. When you need space, it's abandonment. When she's upset, it's your responsibility. When you're upset, you're too sensitive. That double standard isn't accidental. It reveals her true nature. Her emotions matter more than reality. And once someone believes their feelings outrank facts, logic stops working. Communication fails. Resolution becomes impossible, which leads to the most important question. How does someone like this react when you finally say no? This is the moment most people never see coming. The first real boundary. You don't yell. You don't accuse. You simply say no. And suddenly the atmosphere changes. Dark psychology predicts this perfectly. When control is threatened, the mask doesn't just slip, it shatters. Confusion turns into anger. Sadness turns into accusation. You're no longer misunderstood. You're cruel, cold, selfish, maybe even abusive. Notice the speed of the switch. One sentence rewrites your entire character. That's not emotion, that's narrative control collapsing. Here's the reveal. Someone who respected you would feel disappointed, but still honor your boundary. Someone who depended on controlling you experiences your no as betrayal. That's why the reaction feels extreme. You didn't hurt them. You disrupted access. Many men backpedal here, apologize, reassure, reopen the door. And the cycle resets stronger than before. But if you don't back down, something far more revealing happens next. When you don't back down, the final pattern emerges, the one that explains everything before it. Dark psychology calls this the identity flip. Overnight, you're no longer the good guy. You're the villain in her story. Was the truth. This outcome was inevitable from the first moment the mask slipped. And that leads to the final, most important realization. Here's the final truth, Dark. Psychology reveals those early moments weren't small. They were warnings. The sigh over a harmless suggestion. The irritation when attention shifted. The guilt when you chose yourself. Those weren't flaws. They were previews. Some people aren't capable of partnership because partnership requires shared focus, mutual respect, and care for each other's autonomy. Their true nature needs constant validation to feel stable. No amount of love can fix that. The most dangerous mistake isn't staying too long. It's ignoring what you already saw. You noticed the tension. You felt the shift. Your instincts whispered before your mind argued. That wasn't paranoia. That was perception. When someone accidentally shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Not the apology, not the explanation, the behavior. Because dark psychology teaches this. Patterns don't disappear. They repeat until you remove yourself from the cycle. Now I want to hear from you. What moment made you realize the mask had slipped? Did you trust it or talk yourself out of it? Your answer might help someone else see what they're still ignoring.